You're listening to the podcast for all of the news, notes, and breakdowns for your Ohio State Buckeyes. This is Sons of the Shoe with Nick Wilson and Spencer German.
Celebrating another Ohio State win, 49-14 over Marshall in Cleveland. Sons of the Shoe is back. Nick Wilson, Spencer German, and as always, we beg of you, please follow along with the show wherever you get your podcast. Apple, Spotify, 92.3 The Fan. Have I mentioned the free Odyssey app? Wherever you get your podcast, follow Sons of the Shoe. If you guys are watching the live stream, of course, you guys can comment. Should we see your comments, we'll go ahead and include those in the live version of this. But this is
there's no avoiding the YouTube comments from me when we do a live show, because I can put them in the show and actually respond to them.
I think this is what you've been waiting for.
Yes.
You've been waiting to get that criticism or the compliment. I'm not saying which one. But again, guys, just go ahead and comment for the show there, and we appreciate you. But this is the Ohio State postgame show for Sons of the Shoe following the Marshall win. And it really does seem like how you feel about this game, Spencer. It seems to be beauty's in the eye of the beholder, because I don't know, everyone's just excited that they won 49-14.
I think I honestly think that's probably the perfect way to put it. It's kind of in the eye of the beholder. I know we're going to talk about Will Howard and among a number of things here on this show. I kind of had that exact line in a tweet back and forth commentary I had with somebody on social media during the game. Cause I'll just come out and say it here. Like, I thought Will Howard was okay, but I felt like the bad moments were sort of concerning for him. And yeah, like the numbers don't look terrible, but I also think like there was reasons for that. And I don't know that they did a lot that made me feel like he's like this amazing quarterback. And so there was a guy who was going back and forth with me saying like, hey, I don't know that I think you're overanalyzing here. Like he's played like a pretty good game aside from the interception. I don't think that was a bad ball, yada, yada, yada. And then I was kind of like, I think it's in the eye of the beholder here. So I think along those same lines, I applied to that situation specifically, or that player specifically. But I do think like that this game sort of shook out this in a similar fashion, where there's things that we're going to say we liked and there's things that we're going to say we didn't like, and people might have felt differently about certain aspects of it as well.
So specifically, because I mean, there's a lot to get to here. We've got Jaden Fielding in 3 straight kickoffs, pooping the bed, quite literally. That was weird. There was Marshall's fast start where Stone Early looked as cool as his name suggests he would be. I went on social media say that is the name version of BDE, because that is for real. When we go to Stone Earl. I think I called him Stone Early, but and listen, there's the third down defensive performance, which I think Radu has already kind of pointed to in our comments there. But while we're kind of just early in this, what specifically about Will Howard's performance concerned you? Because he only threw 20 attempts, and plus the interception, he only had 3 additional incompletions.
I think so. Like, I know people are going to point and say, like, well, look at the yards. He had 275 yards. But I think what's
yada that in a very funny way. Look at those 270 yards in the NFL right now. That's like 400 yards.
Well, yeah, but I think what people are forgetting is a lot of those passes were behind the line of scrimmage. I mean, he got the big touchdown pass obviously early on, to the first one of the game, to Emeka Egbuka for 68 yards. So that already takes up like a whole chunk of that. He had late in the game the long pass, obviously, to Jeremiah Smith for the touchdown, which obviously helped that cause as well. So I just don't like, and I'm not saying that's bad, because part of the reason Will Howard shouldn't feel like it's all on him is the fact that he has these freak athletes around him that can, 2 yards in a cloud of dust after they catch the ball. So I'm not saying it's the end of the world. I just think like against a team like Marshall, Emeka Egbuka is going to break a 68-yard touchdown. Jeremiah Smith maybe is a little bit different. He could do that, I think, against really good teams. Not that Emeka Egbuka can't, but I'm just saying, like, against better teams, like better tackling, you're not going to hit as many of those big plays just from throwing the ball behind the line of scrimmage. I didn't see a lot of pushing it downfield. And the one time he did push it down the field, that ball was a little bit short of where it should be. I will say, I didn't think Jeremiah Smith did him a lot of favors there. It looked like he was kind of lackadaisically going down the field on that route a little bit. But I just think going back to even earlier games in the season, when he's throwing the ball downfield, it's when he tends to come up a little bit short on passes. And we saw that again today, which is why I kind of felt like I just didn't see like that. Against a team like Marshall, I want him to look great. I didn't think he looked great today.
I mean, I don't think he had a chance to look great because they figured out very quickly
and
that Marshall couldn't stop the run.
That's fair too. Like I do give him some leeway in that they obviously were maximizing the run game today and utilizing that as their strength. And I know we're going to talk a ton about that because that was amazing how well they played and the fact that it looked like they out-physical the team, which is something we've had concerns about. But yeah, I just from Will Howard specifically, I just didn't think he looked great today. But I understand there's reasons and context for that.
I mean, I think big picture, Ohio State just looked like a team that hadn't played in 2 weeks. And this is the best team that they've played. I think Marshall played as well as you could reasonably play on that first drive. And I think this is textbook, like, I don't say panic. I'm not saying it from you. But anybody who has an issue with the way Ohio State played today, like, it's Marshall. Like, I don't need you to feel like you have to sharpen your knife against Marshall. You know, I mean, I think there's one or two things that I think you can really say, like, well, this is something to look for. Specifically, the kind of lackadaisical early effort by the defense, which looked like they were sleepwalking through the game. And I'll be honest with you, the other thing to me is the pass blocking. For what Ohio State did run blocking today, where they opened up a lot of holes. I thought they got down the field really well in run blocking.
Yeah.
I got to say, I mean, it's not just because Mike Green made Josh Fryer look like a complete slap ass. But no, I mean, I thought Marshall all day was getting push in that pass game, and it's befuddling. Like I cannot figure out how a Sun Belt in two MAC defensive lines, specifically when it comes to pass blocking, have looked what I would say is reasonably good against an Ohio State offensive line. I think if we want to take anything away about that, the O-line, at least when it comes to pass blocking, with Donovan Jackson back today, still looks like they're going to be a problem and something you have to overcome this year.
Yeah, and I'll say this too, because we did our prediction on the midweek show, and I said this was my fear with the early season bye. And I'll throw this up here. Our obviously Radu listens a lot, comments a lot. We appreciate you, Radu. He said they will look better next week. Early season bye had something to do with the slow start, and that was my fear. If you remember, Nick, in our prediction was I was worried that they'd come out a little bit sluggish. Not that I thought they were going to take Marshall lightly necessarily, but that I thought it was going to kind of take, because I thought they got a little bit better from week 1 to week 2, and then all of a sudden it's like, okay, now you have a week off. There wasn't that same progress into week 3 because you had a bye week. So I was kind of waiting to see what that was going to look like, and that ended up being what played out. Was they just kind of went through the motions, it seemed like, early on, at least on defense especially, and then the offense obviously started running away from it, and then they helped the cause there, and the defense was able to tighten things up a little bit later. But yeah, I just think the offensive line is going to continue to be an issue. Now I see, like, you broke it down as like pass blocking versus run blocking. I actually thought, like, I even split it like from the center on either side. Like, I thought the left side with Donovan Jackson back looked a lot better than it did in recent weeks, and the right side had a lot of issues, as you mentioned, Josh Fryer looking like a turnstile on that one sack that Green had. So yeah, I thought like there was noticeable differences there, even up front, where you could tell the left side kind of had it together and was playing a little bit further ahead or better than the opposite side was.
I'm gonna go back to Radu's thoughts there, guys. Because I listen, I just think this is what it is. Like, they didn't cover, but at no point was this game truly ever in danger at literally any point in the game. So with that being said, you sound more concerned with this performance than I do. I have zero concern coming out of this performance.
Wait, me?
Like, yeah. I'm hearing a little bit of that panicky Germinator.
Oh. The only thing I said so far is I didn't think Will Howard played that great, but you just said the offensive line played poorly in pass blocking. I said I thought that the left side played better than the right side. Well, how does that mean I'm panicking?
Because you took a guy that had 6 for 20 with 275 yards, and you're like, I just don't know, man. Like, I think the takeaway today is, holy crap, Quinshon Judkins and Travion Henderson are ridiculous. And obviously, I think like half of the Judkin yards came on the first big touchdown, big touchdown run,
86-yarder, yeah.
But it's so funny because, I think of Travion as the guy with the giddy up. Quinshon has that extra level of speed that kind of surprised me today. And again, we'll see it against Big Ten defenses going forward. But I mean, Marshall is no slouch defensively, specifically up front. And man, when he hit that gear, I was like, oh yeah, that's the guy from Ole Miss. Okay, all right.
Yeah, I think like the way that he played, the way Henderson played, and even Jeremiah Smith on that late touchdown like, to go back to your point, this felt like a game that Ohio State didn't play their best, obviously. But they knew that they were going to be able to just like
I smell the panic in
there.
No. I smell you wanting to warm up the panic machine.
All I'm trying to say is like, this is the game was never, it never felt like they weren't going to win. And I think they just knew they could out-talent Marshall was the point I was trying to make. Like, even though there were some moments where the defense like didn't play well and the offense, gave up some a sack here or there, there was almost the muffed punt that wasn't, they got bailed out by Marshall lining up in an illegal formation. Like, that was kind of a nervous moment where it's like, oh, okay, this isn't good. But like, I think they, in the end, you saw that Ohio State just had the horses to beat Marshall no matter what, which is, I think, why, Charles Huff coached the way that he did, where it was like, hey, I'm going to go for it on fourth down a lot. I'm going to keep trying to like just keep our offense on the field, because he knew that if he kept giving the ball back to Ohio State, eventually those things would happen, and that came to fruition. But I think Judkins was, I think, the highlight of that. He would find the hole. Specifically, I think to go back to my point on
it's a family podcast there, Spencer.
To go
Good
back
Lord.
to I'm sure he's going to find plenty of holes at some Ohio State parties tonight. But
no, okay. I know we occasionally have to go through this. That's something that Nick Wilson says.
Okay,
Spencer
I can't even say the word hole now. What the hell?
No. There was a way that you said hole. And the inference of hole.
Okay, well, you took it there. All I was trying to say was he found the hole in the offensive line and he was gone. That was all I was trying to get at, okay? Okay,
Nick, prayers to the offensive line.
You took it
there.
No
wonder they couldn't pass block. They were worried about turning their back to Quinshon.
They were worried about too much penetration from the Marshall defensive line.
Like Quinshon is P. Diddy Jr. over here.
Okay, now that's a whole. Okay, now it's a family podcast. Okay?
Yes, that's No, you're bringing the family element. No. I'm the one that is wildly suggestive. Like, look at this face. This is the snootiest hillbilly you've ever met.
I think you I think you what's the word I'm looking for? I think
you
I think you underestimate me. That's the word I was looking for.
All right. I probably
this has gone completely off the rails. We were talking about Quinshon Judkins,
actually,
and how amazing he was today.
So as we're talking just about the game in general, can I just say the refs today, they made a couple of really good calls, but did it have it felt like the ref show. And if I'm a Marshall fan, I feel like they're against me. They got the calls right, but okay, for instance,
it took a long time to get there.
The initial fumble review that fumbled out of bounds that shouldn't have taken 5 minutes. The end of, was it the second quarter? Yeah, it was the second quarter. Took the final 2 minutes took 12 minutes of 15 minutes of real time. I don't know what that was, but man, was that frustrating, because it completely led to a disjointed game in terms of watchability.
You want the refs to get those things right, of course. That's the whole point of replay and this being more and more implemented at the college level and obviously in the NFL level over the years. But for it to take that long, okay, there's got to be a happy medium here where it's get the call right, but do it in a fashion that's a little more timely than what you did. Where it was taking so long to figure out some of these calls. It was I love that Joel Klatt was just openly calling them out every single time too. He's like, man, Dean, you already figured this one out. Why don't we just keep it moving?
I just like that it was like, well, we've seen the fumble out of bounds 17 times from 17 different angles, but we have an 18th. And we're going to look at that one for 5 minutes. Well, and again, that's just one example of the calls. And it's one of those things where I think I've started to adapt this in the NFL, and I think this way for college football as well. The first 4 weeks of the season, I just don't want that many calls. Like, I think you have to be a little looser early in the season, because if you don't, you could just call something on every play, because none of these teams, no matter how well coached they are, none of them are spotless early in the season. And I almost think it's like basically tightening a string as the season goes on. And maybe it's just me, but throughout college football, I've seen the ref show do too much. I will say this game is an indicator of why I hate having multiple buys early in the season. I know that scheduling is a B, and I understand that now that we got three out of conference games and the extra conference game. I know that changes things up, but dude, I mean, if I look at this, when we start to talk about the big picture, some of the sloppiness, like outside of like maybe the O-line pass blocking, outside of that, everything I saw today was you've had week 0 off, and now weeks 3 off, going into week 4. And it's like, all right, I think that's just one too many off days early in the season, because it's just impossible to get ready for that.
Well, and I don't know how much longer Ohio State's going to be able to, I don't want to say get away with an early bye like that, or if they have an early bye, like get away with having an inferior opponent on the other side, because all we keep hearing, Nick, is that as they expand the conferences and all these different things, like different crossovers are going to be happening. You know, like Bama's on Ohio State's schedule in several years and whatnot. So I don't know that it's always going to be so simple as like, okay, you have a week 3 bye, and then you come back against a team that you, like we saw today, can just out talent because you have that many good players. Like, there's going to be some tougher games, I think, moving forward, where you might have an early season bye and you got to be ready from the jump because they're just as talented as you.
So I actually, I'll be honest with you, like, because I saw the style points argument today. It doesn't matter anymore. Like, it really doesn't. Like, especially like early in the season.
That's
like,
fair.
Guys, if LSU wins out the rest of the time, no one's going to care about the week 1 loss. And by the way,
if Notre Dame wins out, like, no one will care about the NIU loss.
But like specific, and by the way, Ohio State and Notre Dame are on a completely different level of it comes to, well, hey, you beat them 49-14. Well, okay, that's kind of what we expected. So you pass go. And I think it's interesting because, you know, that conversation does change as you get into the Big Ten. But like even this Michigan State game, like, all right, if you play with your food, like the ridiculous thing about Ohio State, as you showed, is there was sloppiness. There were like drive killers. And then the next play, it was a random 50-yard touchdown. It was, you know, Quinshon breaking free.
Well, that's why I said, like, they knew they could out-talent Marshall. And I think that's what played out on the field today.
Well, but I do think, like, I think it goes back to, I think one of the big criticisms we have of Ryan Day might no longer be applicable going forward, because the big criticism is, well, your teams get sloppy and have sloppy games. They're not crisp every game. We've weaponized like Saban's ability to beat everybody by like 35 points. I don't think that matters anymore. And I think it actually allows Ryan to, and his coaching staff to relax a little bit and to kind of just go, we'll talk about this, you know, depending on how we look against Oregon. I'll say this, everything that I've seen today reminded me that you don't have to play perfect against Oregon either, because your margin of error is insane.
Well, I think too, we're still several weeks away from that matchup, but the biggest thing that stands out to me about both those teams is that they kind of have the exact same question. Like, the biggest question mark they both have is the offensive line. Like, that's been the biggest issue for Oregon to this point as well. And I don't think that Dylan Gabriel's like the athletic playmaker that Bo Nix was at Oregon the last couple of years. So yeah, like I think that's maybe one of the more interesting things about that matchup when we get there, is the fact that they both have the same sort of problem, that thing that we would consider a problem at least at this point in the season.
All right, guys, want to hear from you on this one. How much do Ohio State's sloppiness and struggles matter? Are you where Radu are, where I am, where Spencer would like to be, but clearly he's a little panicking.
I'm not panicking. I said one negative thing. Can we just start the show over and start with like Quinshon Judkins, the god of running backs in college football? Let's start there instead. I brought the Will Howard thing because it was an anecdote that applied to what you said.
But I think I just think it's the essence of nitpicking in college football. Now I'm being rude to you. I'll ask you, like, what else stood out?
Yeah, I mean, I think what's funny is, to the point of, it being sloppy at times, you kind of took the good with the bad today, but I think, like, from an offensive standpoint, obviously Quinshon and Henderson, and the fact that we finally saw them sort of mixed and matched better. Like the first couple of games, I don't think we got that as much. We saw how they're going to get utilized, and that there's kind of this changing, like, okay, once you get this series, you get that series. And just like the fact that both those guys support each other in that venture is pretty cool. And I think too, like, we saw what that can do for this offense, because the run being such a problem for Marshall to stop was what set up then the Jeremiah Smith touchdown pass, because there was a run blitz on that play. And that kind of opened him up into an area where there was a linebacker missing. And then Will Howard threw a great ball to him to have him, get out in front and then do his thing like he always does and pull away for the touchdown. So I think, like, that was huge. I do think, like you said about the offensive line, maybe passing, less some stuff to be desired, but run blocking wise, you saw this team out physical, a good defensive line from all estimations. And I thought the left side looked a little bit better than the right side, but I thought that was good. I also think, even though it took a while, I thought Ohio State's defensive line really clamped things down in the second half, which was good to see. And despite you thinking I'm panicking, I didn't necessarily read in too much into, like, the slow start from the defense being like, oh no, teams can move the ball on them, because again, it was mostly in the first half. I understood, like, the first drive, there was probably going to be some rustiness, if you will, coming off of a bye week. And so I kind of anticipated that anyway. But
I think this is wild. Real quick, I was looking at the box score. So Marshall had 69 offensive plays. Nice. But they had 18 attempts on third down. They were 7 of 18, which goes into the Ohio State third down
Ohio
defense.
State only got to 8 third downs.
Yeah, struggled a little bit here. But Ohio State ran 57 offensive plays. They only got to third down territory 7 times.
Yeah, that's insane.
So it was wild. Like, it's like, I think today's performance, that's the kind of my pushback on the Will Howard thing, is it's so tough to, like, analyze his performance, because you didn't get to see those situational football moments that kind of matter the most. And it's honestly insane, dude, that we have not mentioned Jeremiah Smith.
Which we will. And real quick, I'll say this on the third down thing too. I think that also does speak to what I've been saying about, like, they out-talented Marshall. When you only get to third down 8 times, like, that tells me you're scoring a lot on first and second down. Like, you don't need to get to third down. You're not having these long drawn out drives where they're, keeping you in check, and it's, high stress situations. To your point on Will Howard not really getting thrown into any of those. But yeah, like, that speaks to, they just had the better horses. And clearly, Charles Huff knows that, because he was trying to lure some of them to Marshall with his all-you-can-eat biscuit deal.
I will say, I had a lot of people on my TikTok at Nick Wilson Says, if you want to follow along there, all 75 of you.
Find them on the talk.
So I put the Charles Huff video up there and our reaction to it from this week's show, and I will say the amount of people on my TikTok that were like, I go to Marshall. I go West Virginia for some biscuits.
That's what I said. You got to think about it at least. Like, you at least take a couple nights to sleep on it.
I'll actually say this. I think Charles Huff and his staff were well acquitted today. It wasn't just the players. It wasn't just Ohio State struggles. I thought, one, Mike Green is holy crap.
Yeah, he's
like that dude.
He's gonna be playing on Sundays. He's a good player.
I don't know if he's a first round pick, because you just never know. No. Trying to grade. And also Josh Fryer's not good. But like he was like, you could see even when times they didn't get credit with a pressure or a sack, he was all over the place. And I thought, just in general, Marshall did acquit themselves by playing a really clean game. And the one or two things that were sloppy from them when they had Stone Earl in, they kind of went their way. So I got to say, I really like and respect that dude. That just overall, that's going to be kind of one of the guys that I'm rooting for, because I thought that was just really cool to see him spotlighted this week. And I think he seems like a good-natured dude with a good heart and kind of in it for the right reasons.
Yeah, no, I think that's well said on the Marshall front. And I did think like they knew like they weren't going to be able to make mistakes and win this game. And I think that's why like you saw him at times like Charles Suff, pushing the envelope and going for it on fourth down a lot, or especially early, because he knew he had to find ways to keep his team in this game. I just think that was kind of par for the course with this group. And I think they did the best they could to sort of hang with a team that they knew they were out talented by. But there were some moments Stone Earl, we talked about him in the show leading up to the game. And I don't know that, like I said, like the dual threat thing was something I was going to be watching how Ohio State handled that. And I thought he played like the game of his life, to be honest. Like he played really, really well. He was making some really good throws on key spots, key downs on some of the drives that Marshall had where they scored. I also thought that we saw sort of the emergence of, and we knew going in that Marshall had some pretty good skill players, but I thought Elijah Metcalf was a really good player. That touchdown, I know there was some controversy over whether or not he stepped on the line or not. I thought it was fine that they didn't overturn it because it did kind of look inconclusive. But like his route running, I think he's another player that that's obviously on their roster right now that has a chance to play on Sundays, because he has some pretty good route running. The touchdown that we just talked about, he sort of fooled Lathan Ransom, where he kind of went inside and then cut back outside around him, and that freed him up. Because I was kind of saying to myself, like, how do you let a guy get behind you when you're playing zone coverage in the end zone? And then I saw the route he ran, and I was like, okay, that makes more sense as to how that happened. So learning lesson for Ransom, but I thought it was a really good play by him. So yeah, I think like there were some things that Marshall did well that showed like they at least were going to put up a fight in this game, and it wasn't just going to be roll over and die. And yeah, I think they got Ohio State maybe on like one of their a bad day for them in some respects. And so that made the game feel a little bit closer, especially earlier on than maybe we thought it would.
If you guys are just joining us, Sons of the Shoe here, guys, please follow Sons of the Shoe wherever you get your podcast, Apple, Spotify. Have I mentioned Apple? 923thefan.com, the free Odyssey app as well. We are going to get to like it, love it, like it, and leave it coming up before the end of this. So if you guys want to let us know in the comments there what you love from today's game, what you like from today's game, and what you would leave from today's game, give us those submissions. We'll read them off when we go to get to ours here in a few minutes. But we buried the lead because Jeremiah Smith, and it really is as simple as, he had, I think it was 3 receptions for 70-plus yards on 4 targets. And you mentioned the interception, but that dude is so electric. Like, it's so funny because people are going to look at the stats and be like, oh, he had kind of a quieter day today.
Yeah.
But all that matters is that dude at any point can pop off for what he did, which I think was like a 56-yard touchdown. And it was insane watching him move. I said this, and I think you and I agreed on the podcast earlier this week. Emeka Egbuka is a guy that's going to be a first-round pick this next year.
Yeah,
Emeka Egbuka could probably be somebody's number 1 in the NFL. At worst, he's going to be somebody's number 2. And Jeremiah Smith looks levels above and ahead of him just in terms of explosiveness and playmaking ability. And it is wild to see.
Yeah, it's funny. Radu tweeted us during the game, and he said he hasn't seen a player like Smith at Ohio State in a long time. And I kind of said, like, I thought Marvin Harrison Jr. was going to be like the standard. And already within 3 games of the next season that Marvin Harrison Jr. left, this guy's already like in that echelon, which is insane. I did the math on this because we had that stat on the midweek show, Nick, about the number of receivers that Jeremiah Smith trailed in those top statistical categories in terms of true freshman seasons at Ohio State. So after today, he trails now only 3 players in touchdowns. It was 4 originally: Chris Carter, David Boston, Garrett Wilson. I think he he's now tied with someone, is why he doesn't trail that person anymore. I'm trying to Devin Smith. He now has as many touchdowns as Devin Smith had in his true freshman season as a whole. He only trails now 5 players in terms of total yards in Carter, Boston, Wilson, Ted Ginn, and Devin Smith. And then he only trails 5 players now in their true freshman entire seasons in terms of receptions: Carter, Boston, Wilson, Ginn, and Tate. Carnell Tate, who he had, I think, 18 receptions last year. So he'll get there pretty quickly here and pass him too. But obviously he's the one that's his teammate right now of this group. But I mean, it's insane that 3 games in, this guy is already almost put together the greatest season in a true freshman wide receiver season in Ohio State history. Like, that speaks for itself. But to your point, like, yeah, I said, like, I question a little bit, like, how effective Ohio State can be against better teams when they're throwing the ball behind the line of scrimmage a lot. But he's the guy that no matter what. And in the passing game, because I think, Quinshon Judkins and Trayvon Henderson can equally, break a big one here or there whenever. But he's the guy that you feel like at any moment he can catch a pass and he's just gone. I mean, it's remarkable how incredibly good he already is at this stage of his career, and it's been fun to watch him.
Yeah, I think obviously the most recent thing we've had is Marvin, and what I would say is Jeremiah Smith's start is ahead of where Marvin's is. What I think is really exciting to contemplate is what the end game with Jeremiah is. But can we put up Tyler's message to us here? Because this one's solely on you. This one right here, your Will Howard panic to start the podcast begat Tyler saying, "We need Kyle McCord." I still don't think anyone should have seller's remorse on Kyle McCord. And by the way, I do think Kyle's clearly healthy this year. I think he's taken a step forward. But Kyle decided to leave. Like, Kyle was told, you're going to have to, sing for your supper.
The job, yeah.
And he got his panties in a bunch after being pretty mid and being floated by Marvin Harrison Jr. So I think I'm still pretty okay with Will Howard.
I mean, okay. As much as I said I thought Will Howard didn't have his best game, I'm not sitting here saying no. At no point during this show did I say, "Oh man, I really missed Kyle McCord today." That never happened. And
all right, guys, if you're listening,
I am in charge. I am in charge of clipping these clips, so I will not be clipping that one where I said that, so that you can use it against me and say, "Oh, see, you did say it." I never said I wanted Kyle McCord back. I just said
I can pull the audio.
I was expecting a little bit more from him throwing the ball downfield, and we haven't seen that to this point. So that's all I was saying. Regardless, no, there's no seller's remorse of Kyle McCord, and I actually think, even though he rebounded, obviously, last night against Stanford in the game that he played for Syracuse, and they lost that game, first loss of the season for the Orange, but I saw moments, because I turned that game on for a little bit last night. I saw the old Kyle McCord very early in that game. There was a lot of short throws and, missing guys completely. And I was like, where have I seen this before? And I was texting on my Syracuse football fans like, there you go. That's the Kyle McCord that I know.
Matt Thomas, that's my guy right there. Yes, sir. He's going to clip it for me because I am
ridiculous,
technologically illiterate compared to you youngins. And Matt's got my back
ridiculous.
Here about
Matt,
your when Will Howard comes in 5th in the Heisman, I'm gonna play that clip for you right here. So
I don't want Kyle McCord back. I'm setting the record straight on that right now.
So we have a few submissions on this one, but if you guys want to put in your love it, like it, and leave it from today's game, make sure to go ahead and comment here. Let's start with your. Should we start? Should we start negative and then go positive?
Well, so last year we started with like it. Last year we would do like it, love it, leave it. But if we want to change it up this year and do the negative first, we can do the negative first. It's we're still a relatively new podcast, Nick. Nothing is set in stone in terms of bits, except for maybe the Michigan Panic Meter, which doesn't really exist right now because
Michigan sucks.
Well,
my God.
Hey, we say that though, but as we're doing the show, they're up 7-0 on USC. So that is something.
So listen, clearly you and I are sitting here talking and we're not watching the game. The amount of tweets the amount of texts that I've gotten that Michigan's offense looks crappy makes the fact that they're up 7-0 look very, very funny to me because I don't know where that's coming from. Sorry, guys. I got secondhand results there, secondhand analysis. I'll never do it again. I'm going to go ahead and start with like it. I actually like Will Howard's performance today. I thought
doing this in spite of me.
I promise. I thought
this is classic Nick Wilson right here. He had some other things written down and he just pivoted at the last second. You know what? I'm going with Will Howard.
I had nothing written down, which clears. You're going to hear that as we go through this. No, what I liked about Will Howard today is there are going to be days where he has to just take a step back and where he has to just yield the offense basically to the asinine talent around him. And I thought he did that. I think I don't think the game plan today was about Will Howard versus that defense. And I think, to see Will still have a pretty banner day and just basically avoid screw-ups minus a single screw-up, I thought that was a nice performance by him. And I promise you I'm not doing it just to troll you, or maybe I am. What's your like it?
Yeah, so I don't like to play by the rules, so I wrote down 2 here. But from an Ohio State side, I said the left side of the offensive line. I like the way they played today. I thought run blocking, especially the Quinshon Judkins touchdown, it was evident. Like those guys, I think it was actually a duo play. There was multiple double teams, and then they kind of broke off and went to the next level. And I was like, okay, the Donovan Jackson effect is in full force. My other one is more so just an ode to Charles Huff, because I'm gonna tell you, like, I like that guy. It wasn't just the biscuit, all you can eat biscuit NIL deal, which was hilarious this week. But, like, I thought the way he coached today was good. He wasn't afraid to take some chances because he knew he had to, going for it on 4th down. He seems like a really likable guy. He's been around college football. I fell in love with him from a standpoint of, like, I'm gonna root for him when they're not playing Ohio State. I like that guy. He's a good dude.
I'm just going to say this to Coach Huff because I know he's watching right now. He's one of our viewers. We caught his attention with the biscuit talk.
Hey, Coach, we will take those. We will take that biscuit deal. We're just saying. Nick pitched it the other day.
Well, no, here's the thing. I'm not going down to West Virginia for some biscuits. But if you would like to send some biscuits up here and maybe like the whole menu, Spencer and I will be doing this week's show with a mouthful of, like, we'll do it while eating biscuits.
We'll promote your program a little bit for you. It's Sons of the Shoe with a side of biscuits from Marshall's head football coach.
I'll also just be honest with you. It's easy to root for a school like Marshall because I love the Sun Belt Conference. Obviously from my time in Charlotte, I fell in love with App State and their insane fans. Boone is a beautiful town. So, like, I already got love for the Sun Belt, but yeah, Charles Huff, that's a very good like it there. Let's go to leave it. And I'm going to just say, like Radu, who submitted this, and again, you guys should send in or can send in your love it, like it, and leave it for today's Ohio State 49-14 win over Marshall. Radu said, kicking the ball out of bounds. I was worried we were having like a Chuck Knobloch, Steve Blass, a case of the yips. And so I'll be honest with you, I think that is something that's super interesting. Now, I don't know that it should be more than just a what the was that? But it certainly was a what was that?
Yeah, I'm going to be honest. My first thought after he did it for the 3rd time was like, is Ryan Day just like want them to work on something? Like, is he trying to put the defense in like in a bad spot where it's like, hey, shorter field for the other team's offense. Let's see if we can get off the field here. That was my initial thought. Was like, is he doing this on purpose? Because I was like,
magical thinking.
Well, yeah. I mean, I was obviously I'm being tongue in cheek, but
did the Easter Bunny tell him to do it?
But when you see 3 in a row like that, it was just perplexing. I was like, what in God's name? Like, why does this keep happening? So I would agree that has to be on the leave it list. I'll just to make it a little bit different. I will say the right side of the the right side of the offensive line. Which was a problem. And to your point, Josh Fryer did not look good today. After I thought he actually took steps forward in the Western Michigan game a little bit, I thought he took a couple steps back today. So still kind of a work in progress, specifically on that right side.
All right, guys, that means it's time for Love It. As I have jumped the shark and jumped your answers each time, I will leave the first Love It to you, my friend. What do you have?
I think it has to be just kind of a long answer here, but like the run game with the ability, the fact that they showed an ability to win that way. because like one of the first things that comes to mind for me, Nick, in a game that you win with the run game being as good as it was today, is just how we know the stat on the team. Oh, I think it's like the last, 10 plus meetings between Michigan and Ohio State. The team that won the game, the run game, won that game. We know that that's a point of emphasis for this Ohio State team to be better physically in the trenches, most notably, but to have two running backs that can almost, even make up for some of the lack of talent maybe on the offensive line or some of the struggles that they might have. Like, we saw this thing in full effect today. Like, that was peak. If this run game can play like that consistently, there's not going to be a lot of teams that can slow that group down with the changing up of Judkins and Henderson. That's a really, really dangerous combo. And I think that it also frees up Will Howard to make more plays when the run game's working. Like, just what that does for this offense is a massive, massive thing. So, I think that has to be the thing that you love the most about today.
So if we look back to, Georgia at their peak, at their best team, Nick Saban's best team, they've had teams that were good and consistent, which you need to see more of today. But more importantly, they just had those death blow plays. And if you look at it, Quinshon Judkins' long rush today was 86 yards. Travion's longest rush today was 40 yards. Mekabuka's longest catch was 68 yards. Jeremiah Smith, 53 yards. Like, you've got four guys who at any point can make an explosive play. So my love it is just explosive plays, because it doesn't matter whether you're playing Marshall or Michigan State or Oregon, when there's the psychological effect of being able to go down the field at any point and you make one mistake and the game changes. And, I know we still are going to have questions as things evolving, but if you just keep that going into Big Ten play, I don't know how he's going to beat you. Because they can beat you for 4 quarters and 14 minutes, and 2 plays can change, and all of a sudden you've lost the game.
Yeah. Well, and that's the benefit Ohio State has. Like, when you can recruit at the level they can, when you can provide the NIL dollars that they can, you get those players that give that eliminate, like they close the margins for you a little bit. Like, you're able to, maybe you are outmatched against a team that has equal talent as you, but it only takes like 1 or 2 plays. Like, they fix a lot of warts that you might have. And I'm not saying Ohio State has a lot of warts, but those having players of that caliber and that talent level, they erase some of those things that might be mismatches for you in other games because they're so good. So yeah, I like that answer. And I think it's another notable thing to come out of today that's worth monitoring going forward, because Ohio State can continue to beat teams like that.
Well, and here's the thing: you can beat Georgia that way, you can beat Bama that way, and Tennessee, and by the way, some of those teams have that, but like Georgia's inability to get those explosive plays against Kentucky is why they damn near lost last week. So, all right, guys, great. I feel like I can't even say it because I know you don't believe it. Great win by the Buckeyes today.
Oh, my God.
We'll have a midweek episode up as we head into the Michigan State game, coming out of reaction to this game, see what Coach says early in the week, injury news, all that, and, of course, the latest in the unstable world of college football. So make sure to tune in to that. And as we are a relatively new podcast, please make sure to follow Sons of the Shoe wherever you get your podcast. Apple, Spotify, 92.3 The Fan, the free Odyssey app, and more. And hey, if you want to watch us, if you like to watch this ugly mug and Spencer's fresh-faced cherubic thing, that sounded very insulting, by the way. I'm sorry. Make sure to go to 92.3 The Fan's YouTube channel. Just search 92.3 The Fan in the bar there, the search bar. Like our videos, comment. At least one of us will comment back because I care about the show. Man, now it's just getting super personal. Spencer, you got anything before we go, buddy?
I mean, I know you're mad at me for what I said about Will Howard, but you didn't have to take all these unnecessary shots at the very end of the show. But it's okay. I'm going to tell you right now, if I could screen share, I guess technically I could, but I would show you. I am going to this video right now to respond to some comments already. So I'm going to be doing that here in the next 5 minutes. I don't know if I'll come back after that, but I'll be here for the next 5 minutes.
I'm super proud of you. Look at that. All right, guys. Again, see you midweek. Follow Sons of the Shoe wherever you get it. Thanks again for stopping by, guys. Go Bucks.